So as he's reaching to grab, I'm being like certain, no, and then I'm going to drive this here just to get a little bit of reaction. If that's what I need to drive this right through his neck or through his eye, just keeping this inside, tripping him, pummeling. Once I start this, I want to cause as much damage as possible until I know that he can't do anything back to me.
Hi guys, I'm super excited to have hold of you to teach us a little bit more about how to use a tactical pen, and more precisely atomic bear pen, to defend yourself, self-defense. And you guys are experts, and I really want to understand your vision and the way you would use that tool for self-defense. So there's so many scenarios that can happen. But I think over the weekend in that class, you went over different scenarios, from standing, pulling a knife, or pulling a weapon. So I think that would be super useful to just see how you would do this with a pen, and how you would protect the weapon and go through that weapon retention drill that you taught us.
Okay. So basically, you're looking for strategies, tactics, how we would incorporate for ourselves or passing on to students.
What you would pass on to students? Yeah.
Ben wants to go first.
Okay, so before we start into any technique, one of the things I always take into consideration with what I carry is it has to be explainable. Like if any point I get stopped or anybody's looking at what I have around, I have to be able to explain why I have it, what is, things of that nature, right? So one of the things, obviously, pen, I always have one, whether it's for travel, writing, any of that nature. So, and a pen is very commonplace out in your environment. It's so common, in fact, that as you talk to somebody, having it in your hand isn't uncommon. It's not something that really stands out. Whenever I'm not here, I'm usually sitting someplace and I have a notepad in front of me and I'm listening to a podcast, taking notes, or I'm just thinking and writing things down. So there's usually a pen always either on me or in the vicinity. And it's, like I said, very explainable. The other thing to consider is if I'm looking at to use common vernacular, self-defense scenario, the moment I put anything in my hand, I generally start to consider it lethal. That's how, because I'm adding something. It's a level up, right? So, and that's the way that, as far as, I wish we had an officer here at this point, but no one really complains about like an open hand or a fist, but as soon as you add something to that, it becomes different, right? So I never look at a pen as being less than lethal or less lethal or something of that nature, right? So the other thing, whenever I look at employing the pen for that sort of action, I treat it like a blade. Okay. So I didn't come up with in law enforcement. I never really studied under law enforcement. So I know a while back there's like a whole, like, what do they call them, Kubotans, or whatever, where they like short, they'd like put them in their hands and grab and manipulate joints and things like that. I didn't get any of that. Right, so for everything for me was inserting, thrusting, stabbing, that type of deal, right? And whenever I think about employing a pen, it's in that nature. So generally, it's never up, it's reverse ice pick grip, or in the center of your hand, braced up against your palm for inserting in this manner, right? So even if I'm stabbing this way,
so
I'm
you block the back so it doesn't
Yes.
it doesn't come out of your hand
Yes.
when you're using to stab.
Yep. I don't stab like this because it can get I'm not braced, right? So if I'm stabbing or thrusting with it, I'm bracing it against it. There's a backstop behind it, right? So that's generally what I think about.
Yeah, so you're talking about the grips. So you mentioned the ice pick grip, and you have the palm or the forward grip. I see. So that is the two grips that you go to. Now there's a deployment that happens. So you mentioned it's a pen, so you can walk around with it. Nobody will think you want to defend yourself with that necessarily. But if you carry it, there's many ways to carry it. But like, how would you, for example, draw it from your pocket?
So it's in my pocket just like any pocket knife would, and I'm just scooping with my thumb. I'm inserting my thumb into my pocket, and I'm just running behind it, and I'm like catching it with the web of my hand, and I'm pinching the web of my hand together.
Right. Right away you're in reverse grip, ready to use it.
if that's what I want.
Yeah.
And you can just hold it and talk and.
Yeah. So you show a forward grip also deployment from the ground. So what it would look like.
Yeah, so a lot of times what I'm looking at is trying to conceal that in my hand and not present it.
All right.
Until it's too late. So it's under the question of who's using these techniques, what's their mindset, are they trying to be a little bit passive, or are they trying to replace an object that we previously had? So we've talked in the past about the fact that the majority of my students carry knives, pistols on a regular basis. We do use pens as an improvised weapon, but that's usually because they can't have one of those, or they're trying to use that as a level below said object.
Yeah.
Just as Ben's talking about, it can be something that is just in your hand that you can present to someone. But if I believe that there's going to be some sort of violence, I want to make sure that I'm talking to somebody that's in my hand, regardless of if they wonder what's in my hand or not. They really shouldn't be able to see that. So when we're on the ground, all of my draws are done from a position where it can be placed in my hand and I can grapple normal. And then what happens is once I get a dominant position as far as positioning of my hands, then what I can do is I can start causing trauma. My goal is to cause as much trauma as possible, as quickly as possible, because I understand that this, even though it is kind of a force multiplier, is not as effective as a pistol or a knife. As Ben's talking about, once I am in the thought process of defending myself, I don't lean towards the whole I'm going to do only a little bit of damage to you, or I'm going to try to do pain compliance. Because in my opinion, there's just too many scenarios where that's just going to provide him the opportunity to upgrade the situation on his end. And then, well, I have a pen. So if he is a criminal, then he would have a pistol, or he would have a knife, or he would have whatever it is that's there. So if I'm going to defend myself, I'm defending myself until that person is no longer capable of doing anything of harm towards me. So if you want to consider that lethal intent, then that's lethal intent. We've talked about whether you want to have this overt, meaning like I'm here and I'm like, stay away from me, even though I'm in a defensive posture. I can use this to stab or hit and press that person directly away. But once again, by doing so, I'm giving him the opportunity to create space and upgrade the scenario and then cause a problem. We're not going to be in an open area like this. We're probably going to be in a situation where I can't actually exit or move away. And so I am always thinking about that, right? So I would teach something around the fact of, if that person's reaching and grabbing or trying to hit me, I'm pairing that right into that strike. So as I'm going here, I'm using this to back off and be like, hey, back off, okay? You can do those types of techniques. You can defend against punches, jabs, haymakers. You can stop somebody from taking you down, and all of that is just trying to gain distance so that you can break away.
So you use the same technique as you would use if you would punch back, the block and the parry and stuff, and you finish with the pen too.
Yeah. I try to make it so that you're unarmed, except you have a little bit of a capability of causing a little bit of damage where they didn't know it was, So if he's throwing a haymaker and then I'm trying to drive in, I can work in, and then I can just drive directly through that shoulder to try to press away and be like, back off. There's a lot of that you can work into. What I prefer to do, which is not towards that nice side, is I prefer to pretend like I am unarmed. And so every single thing that we do from this point is going to be me going, please, sir, back off. So as he's reaching to grab, I'm being like, sir, no, and then I'm going to drive this here just to get a little bit of reaction. If that's what I need to drive this right through his neck or through his eye, just keeping this inside, tripping him, pummeling. Once I start this, I want to cause as much damage as possible until I know that he can't do anything back to me. This doesn't have to be a grab. It could be something a little bit more violent. But everything that you do unarmed, whether you're defending against a takedown by bumping your hip and pummeling, this is just an enhancer to your other skills, right? So I would lean really heavy on this has the capability of killing someone. And you should understand that. You should also understand that you have no idea how much strength and power goes into certain things, even though you're saying like, be nice about that. I'm not really throwing everything behind that. If I have a threat that's in front of me and he really is a threat, you're throwing everything behind that. So if you're telling people to hit them in the throat or the eye or the temple, the likelihood that you could cause
Big damage, like
is
serious
there.
damage is there.
So you need to approach this just like any weapon.
Yeah.
And so I would use it like any weapon. I don't want him to ever know that I have something until it's too late for him.
Yeah.
Right?
So are you saying that you have the possibility of escalating the defense, but if you're pulling a weapon to use it, it's because there's a serious threat. Otherwise,
Exactly,
you just
yes.
use your voice, command, your posture.
Back off,
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
I don't want.
If the person keeps going, then you're like,
Yeah,
you're asking me for something.
the moment that I know I have to defend myself, there is no, I'm only doing a little bit here. I'm doing as much as possible to make sure that he no longer has ability to cause me harm or threat or, I don't know if he has more than, one friend. I have no idea what the scenarios around me.
Yeah.
It could be with my family. It could be, at my house. I don't lend too well on the whole just generalized self-defense, here's the tool.
Yeah.
The tool is something that you should have skills for, and then those skills should be applied at the most opportune times.
So it combines with what you already know.
Right.
If someone doesn't know much, like there's people who are just starting, maybe it's the first time they even realize they could use their, let's say, pose, or if not ready to use a pistol or a blade, and they're like, oh, pen, maybe I could. They have not much training. What do you recommend they should start doing in terms of training? They can come to seminars, but if they want to learn a skill that will better them at using a weapon, is there any angles or avenue they should take?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're looking at educating yourself on the kind of damage that it can do, the way to apply that damage as efficiently as possible,
Yeah.
and then from there, obtaining skills that allow you to incorporate those skills or those techniques, right? So, if at any point I wanted to grab him by the neck and drive just like he's showing with the palm of my hand, I need to be good enough to be able to get to that point. So whatever skill sets I need to build on that, I would advise that person to seek that knowledge.
Yeah.
A lot of improvised weapons and weapons of opportunity are built around having a certain set of skills that you're employing.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't build a skill around an object like this as your first skill set and then try to backfill the rest of the skill.
Yeah.
So if you're a grappler, I would use your grappling skills to get to a point and then utilize that pen to cause as much trauma as possible. If you're a striker, I would use it in the same fashion of striking, but I would make sure that it incorporates properly. If you have no skills whatsoever, I would focus on building skills before you use a weapon.
Yeah.
Because he's already covered a bunch of that, but yeah. If you're enjoying this video, I want to take a second to talk about EliteU.com, where you'll be able to find early access to all of our YouTube content, as well as exclusive interviews and access to mentors. And now back to the video.
So when you did the pressure point on his answer, you were in a clinch position, right? So you want to clinch, and that's where. So you would rather use this tool close by when you're actually in action, if you have to use it, and use your body weight on it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, and it's not a pressure point. I'm just stabbing him anywhere in his forearm and driving as much of that into his forearm as possible. I don't care anywhere that it stabs. I just know that if I do trauma to his forearm, that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to use his hands. Right? So the more damage I do to this area, the more that his hand is no longer capable of working, which you're just shutting down the body.
I categorize it. So again, it's I think about it in like upgrading, but backing up just a little bit. They're going to tell you Like they're the ones that vote and determine the level of what needs to be brought to bear. Their actions, right? So this is good. If I do this, I just upgraded. It's better. If I pick up a rock, maybe a little better. If I add this, maybe a little better, depending on the solidity of it. Like, is this really durable kind of thing, you know, or is it a one-time use sort of deal? And then if I have the thing, it's how am I going to use this? Well, it's kind of pointy on one end. It's does maybe you know, you start kind of, okay, well, if I'm sticking with it, that gets now categorized as a blade for me. Obviously, there's no slashing, but it's a thrusting projectile. Like there's, you know, so if I don't know anything about edged weapons, well, this is for me almost identical. Like obviously outside the slashing. So I view it as such.
You can still slash. You won't cut, but you can like scrape, which is not going to open. It's
But
not
we're
as
past scrape.
dramatic.
We're past scrape.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
It's the reason why we don't believe in pressure points. We don't believe in pain tolerance. We don't believe in small trauma because adrenaline and a real scenario is going to bypass a lot of that stuff. It's why things like shock knives don't really work that well when you're doing dynamic type training because you override a lot of that. You don't even feel any of it. Now afterwards you feel it and you're like, oh man, I got cut there. That's interesting. But in the moment, it didn't stop you, didn't slow you down. The same thing goes with those that have a background or a history of violence in their life, where this is a normal thing, you know. So the thing is that when you have to deal with a person that has that in their life as a regular, as a constant, you scraping them is not going to cause them to do anything. In fact, it might push them deep into a comfortability zone because that is exactly what their life is around, and it's not around something that's more civilized. And so you're bringing that to bear, and nothing of that is good because now he knows he's in the fight. He knows you're armed, and what's going to happen now is you lost the element of surprise.
Yeah.
And if Michael's the aggressor, or just anyone, right? I never want to assume his level of commitment. I never want to assume his desired outcome. I've been put into a situation that I can't flee from. So now we're not in self-defense anymore. That's why it's not a thing. If I can walk away, it doesn't exist. So now I have to honor his vote and do what I need to in order to survive and go home. Right? So thinking about scraping, that's now I'm assuming level of commitment. Like that would maybe be enough to deter him or send him on. Like I'm assuming a lower level of willingness on his part. Where I just need to assume the worst. Because for me to assume that, he could be, take him for example, 5th-degree black belt. If he grabs me, it's a bad day. Bad day.
And you don't know because.
And I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, like, so you're mentioning causing as much damage because you don't know you're in a situation where the weapon is needed. So what are your go-to to create that damage with a pan?
So with something like this, it's just leverage points. Like, so you'll notice that when he grabbed me, I chose that because I can use my own body as a point of leverage as I'm leaning into it and I'm driving this directly down. If I am working on something like this, I'm using my arm to press in as I'm pushing this directly through. Right? If we're on the ground and we're in a position, turtle type position where I drove him directly down, if I want to damage his hand, I'm driving this right through because I'm using the ground. Now, this is not a practical application. All I'm saying is that I'm using the ground as a surface area to maximize the fact that this is not really designed to stab. Right? So I want to press that directly off of something there. If we're in the ground here, and then I want to cause some sort of trauma here, I do the same thing. I want to pull his weight forward and arrive that through his eye socket, and I'm going towards areas that aren't covered by bone structure or musculature so I can cause as much trauma as possible. I'm not driving towards things that I know are going to be difficult to do, or I'm going to need a lot of strength to do that, or I lost leverage. I'm on the bottom right now, and so it's very difficult for me to do this. Now, if we switched, right? And we're in a position here where I can just drive this right through his shoulder. I might be able to get a little bit of damage by driving all my weight through his shoulder. And that might be something that you could legitimately, work on. But once again, that's not what this is designed to do. those are the areas that I'm looking at
So
causing
you
it.
mentioned nervous shock or retreat that is like uncontrollable. The three areas. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, there's three soft tissue targets of the body: the eyes, the throat, the groin. Anytime that there's any type of tearing or extreme trauma to it, they're going to cause some sort of violent, uncontrolled reaction. So if I drive my thumb through his eye socket, he's probably going to reach up, grab my hand, try to rip that directly out.
Right.
I know that. If I cause some sort of trauma to his throat and starts swelling internally, he's going to put his hands directly around his throat. Okay, and so these are things that even though you can try to anticipate, if you do real damage to that, it's going to cause something that's uncontrollable. So if I want his hands and I can't get to it and I drive my thumb through his eye and his hands come up, that'll give me his hands and that allows me to start, working, allows me to spin behind them, that type of thing. So these are areas of the body that are vulnerable.
Yeah.
And in sport, you're not allowed to attack them, but if you apply proper skill sets to set this up, and then you are able to utilize something, whether it be your hands or a tool.
So you told me about like luring someone in so you can have a more advantageous position to use the weapon. Can you speak to that? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, like I said, I can expose this so that he can actually see this. So now he knows that he has to deal with something that I'm probably going to stick, or I can be like, hey, sir, please leave me alone. He could try to like move my hand out of the way, get in close. I'd be like, please stop. Now at this moment here, I know that he's close enough that when I expose that I have something, it's a little too late. I'm going to be inside his hands, and then I can drive this right through if I wanted to, or I can try to hit this. And now what happens is everything that I'm doing is inside of his arms. I've kind of just played the game to get him close enough because I know that his intent was violent from the beginning. And if I were to just try to defend myself from the outskirts of that, it's not going to be as advantageous as just making sure I set that up.
Yeah.
And so once again, it depends on your intent. You have to make that decision initially by yourself, your personal self-defense thought
There's
process.
so many scenarios. You cannot think of all the things.
Right.
You might have a knife you don't know,
Mhm.
and then you lure him in, and it could be not like.
Or
yeah.
yes, like it's.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure that if I'm going to do some sort of action, it's not going to cause him just to back up,
Yeah.
get to a better weapon system that he already had on his body that he didn't bring to bear at the beginning, and now I'm wishing that I did stick it through his eye socket.
Yeah.
It might be a small thing, but it's not luring. Like
Oh,
I'm,
I see.
Like I'm
Okay.
not baiting the individual to come in. That's not what's happening.
I see what you mean.
Right.
The term is important here. You're
Yes.
just giving a little bit of confidence.
I'm
No.
picking my moment,
All right.
right? Because I can't get away. So we've determined that we can't get away
Yeah.
based off the other individual's actions.
Yeah.
Like you met Bull,
Yeah.
right? Imagine Bull. You can't get away from Bull. If I was to present something to Bull, Bull takes something from me.
Mm.
I can't show my hand yet.
Yeah.
So I have to wait for my moment.
Yeah.
It's by no means luring.
It's provoking that moment, making that moment happen so that you have an edge over.
It's not provoking it. I might get one opportunity.
Oh, I see.
Again, think about Bull. I might get one opportunity, and that's the rest of my life.
Right.
Right? So if I get one, it has to count.
Yeah.
And if I like burn that money up front,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you also have to think about that. We're not talking about ourselves.
Yeah.
We're talking about who's going to use this. I mean, you have a young female that's going to go to college and she can't carry a knife on college campus. She's allowed to carry a pen. So what happens is, somebody tells her, grab a couple sharpened number 2 pencils, grab this pen, put it in, your front pocket or someplace that you can get to it. And if something really bad happens, you do everything you can to break away, to verbally de-escalate. But there's a lot of scenarios that you can't do that. And so what you're doing is, if you have to defend yourself, you're going to utilize these 3 tools to their max capabilities to cause trauma so that you can break away.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any options. You're completely either outnumbered, you are much smaller than the attacker. The attacker, in turn, probably thought this out. They're prepared. You are unprepared for this. They're going to catch you at the most opportune moment for them, inopportune moment for yourself. And so you're going to have to understand the content. It looks weird because we're capable.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why would they use it? Technically, we wouldn't need to use it.
No. Yeah.
To be honest with you, there's a lot of scenarios where if the damage that increases is just a little bit, then there's no reason to use an improvised weapon like that. Okay, and so the upgrade, you'll notice that a lot of our upgrades is an extreme upgrade, right? It goes from unarmed to using a knife, completely destroying their ability to for their body to function properly, or to a pistol, causing an extreme amount of damage because I have to, right? And so those are the things that we talk about. But you may present this to those that are minors so that they have the ability to defend themselves with something. Those that are family members that don't believe in edge weapons or pistols, or those in countries that don't allow you to do that. But it's probably good to say, or honest to say, that they may not have the mindset or the physical capabilities
To use it when it
to use it at the capabilities of someone like Ben or myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're passing that on to someone else. So you can't just tell them, show your hand, everything else will be fine.
Totally.
Because if he knows that I have it, there's a level of skill that you have to rise above. Like, it makes things so much harder. You are not in a fight. This is not a predetermined, agreed upon moment.
There's no rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is, he's attacking me. I never agreed to this. And so the moment that I show that I can defend myself, it needs to be everything, all or nothing, and it needs to stop that. And if it doesn't, then your mindset has put you in a position where the consequences could be really, really high.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. So there's you got to think about, like, whatever you carry with you, you got to train, understand how to use it. Whether it's a pistol, a knife, a pen, knuckle duster, or pepper spray.
Hand.
Yeah, hand. Yes.
Hand.
Well, you can fight with your hands, right?
You still have to train to use it.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
We come with them pre-installed.
Yeah.
And the thing is that that's not a light decision either. So like that we talked about that in the class. There's a lot of people that for whatever reason believe that if you're in a fist fight or a scuffle out on the street and never escalates past that to weapons, that's just some okay, like, no. That is something that should never happen in your life. Never. Absolutely never. And the moment that somebody tries to hit you or tries to push you or assault you or do whatever, the likelihood that you will die from that probably isn't that high, but the possibility of that being there is there. And so you need to treat it as them attacking and trying to take your life. And if you are in an environment where that happens on a regular basis, then you probably should look at the environment and exit yourself away from that.
Yeah.
That way you don't have to worry about that. But this isn't something where, like, I can use my hand and, you can usually do that all the time. No.
Yeah.
I don't get into fights. He doesn't get into fights.
Yeah.
I don't even get into verbal arguments.
Yeah.
Like, I don't frequent places where that's often. I don't hang around people where that's a regular norm. I hang around people that I aspire to be like, and I make sure that the environments that I am in, there is it's highly unlikely that I have to deal with this. So when it is there, I know that it is a real threat.
Shit is eating a fan at that point.
Right.
It's really bad. You're talking about survival, not just a street fight. You're saving your life or someone else's life that you care about is around you.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean,
why
you kind of mentioned, you said verbally the street fight. You kind of mentioned it prior to, like, people assume that those are non-lethal events. It doesn't take much to fall down and hit your head.
Yeah.
Aneurysm, gone.
Yeah.
But we see it as just like, oh, this is kind of something that could take place. Like, no. That could very easily be a lethal event. Yeah. And most people also haven't, and this is a skill thing, but most people haven't been struck by somebody who knows how to strike. Which, I mean, it's very eye-opening when you see it for real. It's very not sport, and it's a lot of damage.
Yeah, and also it could happen to you. Like, you can push someone, falls on the ground, hit their head, die, then you kill someone.
Yep, a shove.
Yeah, not the intention of killing, just because you get into a fight. And that is also pretty damaging for that person's family and your life afterwards, right? So I think it's great advice. Well, I like the way you bring this to, like, decision-making point, it's your life, or potentially your life is on the line there, and you have to be super intense and super. So how should people think about training? So you mentioned, yeah, think about it, use a weapon, go to. Is there any type of school and type of martial art? You said any martial art could do it. You just add these weapons. But like, for example, knife fighting is a very special skills that you won't learn in jiu-jitsu or anything like that. So someone who wants to learn to use weapons, whatever it is, what do you recommend they look for? Like you guys have a great school where you have seminars, but if I want to train to learn that, is there anything that exists right now that you know, or some sort of martial art or any area that, or is it not?
So again, I look at the tool that I'm trying to utilize, right? So we'll start with guns.
Yeah.
Right? America's a gun culture.
Yeah.
So we have plenty of firearms instructors, things of that nature that can teach you to be capable with a firearm.
Yeah.
America's not a knife culture.
Yeah.
There are other knife cultures around the world. So I would go, well, who's the best at this? Well, I'd look to the knife cultures, and I'd go and find instructors that were from
there,
the culture who that is embedded and ingrained in their DNA.
Yeah.
You know, so you're seeing like things come out of South America, coming out of the Philippines, things of that nature. We got some like Michael here's an anomaly. He's his background's very unique. Obviously, I'd recommend him, but generally I would. But that's why I said he's an anomaly. You know, because he's not from the south of the border, from the Philippines or something of that nature. But that's who I'd look to. I'd go, what's the tool? Where is that ingrained into the culture? Because they are going to have it. Yeah. Like they've used it to the purpose that it's intended to be used for, right?
Oh, that's cool. I mean, was super useful.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Yeah, thank you.
Super useful.
Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed that content, we have more videos over here for you to check out. For those of you looking to enhance your knowledge, make sure that you go over to eliteu.com, where you will have early release of YouTube videos and access to exclusive content. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.